Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a little bit of a review for you. I know it's an old review, but if you're wondering why do I look so dressed up? I just got back from the weirdest graduation party of all time. You know, in the age of COVID, everything is strange. We just did it and her graduation was on Zoom. My sister's graduation, got getting her master's was on Zoom. Oh my gosh, it was just bizarre. It was strange. It was an awkward thing at the house. Anyway, got a little dressed up, a little over accessorized, whatever. But so today we're going to talk about, speaking of COVID-19, I wanted to talk about Woman in the Window. But the thing about Woman in the Window is I'm late. You probably already heard of this. You may have even already read it, but I just read it. And this is I just read it. Sound like saying the website. But I just read it this past spring or this past summer. And it's very different to me reading this in this situation of quarantine when the whole book is like, not, I don't want to say claustrophobic, but the whole book takes place inside of her house, essentially. The whole story, essentially, like the most important parts taken place inside of her house. And it was kind of uncomfortable reading it because of that. And that's what I want to talk about. If this is going to be more of a discussion review, I am going to talk about how much I liked it or didn't like it. But I think it's just, it was weird. It was weird reading it. It was weird because it was like we were living the same life, but it was supposed to be like shocking because she's like an agoraphobic person and she was living completely differently, especially in a city as hustling and bustling as New York City. So she's living in the middle of New York City and she like never leaves her house to explore New York City. You know what I mean? So you just kind of feel like it hits you different, but it also hit me different because we're in the middle of COVID. I'm like, we are living the same life. Like she wakes up every day, she wanders around her house, she thinks about having visitors or not having visitors. Like I just left the house to go to a little graduation get together. That's like the first get together I've had in weeks in person. She talks a lot to people on the internet. She talks a lot to people in chat rooms. I don't go in a chat room because I feel like chat rooms are, I don't know, not my style, but to me it's the same thing as like going into comment sections and commenting and talking to strangers. Like that's the same thing to me, like almost the same thing. And it just felt too relatable. It just felt too relatable. And not only that, I find myself as someone who's like not working right now in person, like what you watch people more. Like I'm looking out my own window and like look at my neighbors and like I'm noticing like, oh, my neighbor walks their dog every day at 5. Two of my neighbors walk their dog every single day at 5. Oh, she comes for a jog every single day at 10 o'clock. Like I'm just like her. And it's like a little scary in like a different way. It wasn't scary in like a psychological thriller way. It was scary in like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm relating a little bit too much. And she's like rewatching her favorite movies and like quoting all the favorite movies. And I was like, oh gosh, good Lord. Like, that's one aspect. That is one thing I want to talk about liking about this book. I really enjoyed the movies. I almost want like a movie list. I know if I Google it, there's probably somebody with like a reading blog that has already talked about it, that like a list of all of the movies she talks about in here. I'm like, oh, I want to watch all of these. That's like right up my alley. Like if you read like thriller novels, it's probably right up your alley to watch really cool old noir movies. But I like don't. Like maybe I'll subscribe. Maybe I'll use my little paycheck and I'll subscribe my little tiny dinky paycheck. Maybe I'll invest in like the TCM and I'll just go and I'll watch all of the movies that she watches in the book. Well, that's that's just like the unique COVID tie-in, but just overall my feelings on this book overall, I felt like the book was really good, really solid. Um, this isn't a spoiler, I don't think, because I'm not going to say what the twist is. But the twist halfway through the novel was, it was solid. And like, she got me. And if you've read this before, feel free to comment below and just put spoiler warning, because I'd love to talk about it even more. But that twist halfway through, I'm like, okay, she got me. She really got me going. She really had me going. And the way she told the story, I don't want to spoil it, but the way she told the story and the way she was talking to certain characters and the way she told the backstory of certain events, I'm like, this is so clever, because the way we find out certain things, it's like natural. It's not like we have to do mental gymnastics to justify why we didn't know certain things, why certain things weren't making sense. So it does make sense. Um, so if you don't know what this book is about, the rare person who's watching a booktube video who doesn't know what the woman in the window is about, the woman in the window, because this was such a popular book like a year and some change ago. Like everybody was reading this and talking about it. I'm so late. But this is about a woman with agoraphobia, and she is inside of her house. It all takes place inside of her house because she can't leave it because she's agoraphobic and she's afraid. She has like basically crippling anxiety attacks every time she steps outside under like the natural sky. And like you figure out why as you go on along in the story. And as the blurb suggests, somebody is possibly getting murdered. Someone is possibly a murderer, someone else is possibly not a murderer, and she has to kind of figure out what's going on while being agoraphobic and not being able to leave her house. You're like, so how is she going to do that? The way she set it up was, it was really smart and was really good. The only thing I didn't like, and this is such an important aspect of the story, I feel like certain things are like tropes. I feel like alcoholism is incredibly common. And I know that alcoholism is incredibly common. It's almost like, I just feel like it's such a trope. Does that make sense? I just feel like it's such a trope. I feel like alcoholism, having an affair and cheating on your husband, and finding out someone is, I'm not going to say too much, but I just feel like, I just feel like those are my two things that are kind of tropes to me that I could do without. Um, Alcoholism and having an affair. And I know that these things are incredibly real and that people go through these things all the time in real life. I understand that. I have nothing against people who genuinely suffer from alcoholism and addiction. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I just feel like it's always a plot device. And it's frustrating to read, but I guess that would be natural because if you were someone who was close to or related to someone with alcoholism, you would get frustrated. I just got so frustrated with her character. I was just like, she was always drunk. But like, I think my problem with her character, and I know she has alcoholism, I know that, but like, every time something was going on, I was like, please put the bottle down. Like, please, like, aren't you afraid for your life? Like, please be careful. Like, why are you getting drunk? I'm like, I kind of understand. I understand why she was an alcoholic because she had so much trauma that she was doing a really bad job, like, managing. But on the same at the same time, I was like, I'm tired of her like being drunk in every scene. I'm frustrated with her because we're in the middle of this like really serious situation and she's losing ground and she's losing credibility with the people that she's interacting with. And she keeps drinking and I'm like, isn't that the reality? But like, it's like, I'm tired of reading it, but at the same time, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, but isn't that like the tragedy and the struggle of people with alcoholism? Isn't that, you know what I mean? Isn't that the tragedy and the struggle that people with addictions go through? No matter what serious things are going on in their life and how many people they lose, they keep going back to it. So I guess maybe I'm saying that it was well written. Maybe I'm saying that it was so realistic. It was so, her alcoholism was so realistic that I got frustrated with her. Maybe that's what I'm saying. That it was so well written that I was upset. Okay, that's fair. I liked the book. I think I gave it a 4 on Goodreads. Shouldn't I be? Isn't that the point of this review? To me, it's more of a discussion. But also, the main thing that I really didn't like. Well, I guess what I'm saying is I was just frustrated with her character. But other than that, she's actually a really like lovable character. She reminds me a lot of Camille Preaker from Sharp Objects. If you've seen that miniseries or read the Gillian Flynn novel, I've read all Gillian Flynn novels. It's easy to do because she only has 4. So, but she reminds me of Camille Preaker, and Camille Preaker to me is the most lovable Gillian Flynn character. Like, let that sink in. But it's like Gillian Flynn. So you're like, she doesn't have a lot of competition, does she? You know, she's the only one. I just feel like, not to go on a whole tangent, but I felt like this character reminded me of Anna's character reminded me of Camille Preaker in that they don't lash out at people when they're going through, when they're trying to deal with their trauma, or they're trying to deal with things that happen to them or their mistakes or anything in life. They like go inward and they like punish themselves in different way. They both had drinking problems, but they like go inward and they punish themselves. And I feel like I relate to that in a certain way, not to get too philosophical. I know y'all aren't my therapist, but I'm like, I feel like a lot of people could probably relate to that. Whereas like other Gillian Flynn characters, like, I want revenge, you know? Anyway, so she was just really sad, lonely character wandering around her house. The only thing is, when I was relating, because I too am trapped in my apartment, the only thing is, I was like, man, I wish I had her. I think she's like a penthouse, or is it a real house? Does she have a brownstone? I don't know. I forgot already. But I was like, man, I wish I had her house to be lonely in. I wish I had her cat. I want to get a cat, but my apartment is so small, it's hard to keep it clean already with just 2 people. So anyway, the last major thing that I want to say that I also had an issue with, that I didn't like. This is something I genuinely didn't like. I was frustrated with Anna, but now in retrospect, like the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, her alcoholism was actually realistic because she drank so much. It just, some of it was kind of like, but you know, you're going through a situation and you don't know if there's a killer on the loose and you're still getting drunk. Okay, anyway, that's like, please take your meds. Why did they like put her in a hospital? Like, okay, anyway. So the thing that really bothered me, and this is a spoiler, kind of. It's not a spoiler in and of itself. It's like a reference to a spoiler. So when we find out at the very end who the real killer is, and if you've read this book, please comment below. I didn't care for that. I did not care for that. I didn't care for that. I was just like, and I didn't like how she wrapped up the end. And I've seen a couple people say that too, that they didn't like how it ended. I didn't like that ending. I didn't like the ending. I feel like it's believable, but I felt like when I heard the character speaking, by the time we got to that point and we've realized why this character did what this character did and killed the people that they killed, I was still like, I didn't like the way it was executed. I didn't like the dialogue she had this character say, and I felt like the ending kind of, it just went on too long. It was like a villain. It was like a villain monologuing. I guess the character is the villain of this novel because they're the murderer, but like, it was like it was like a cliche villain monologuing, saying all the things that you would think this character would say, like, I killed X character because I hate X because I went through Y and Z. You know, like, it's kind of like, we've kind of been there, we've kind of heard it. It's like I think it's okay. I don't think it's a spoiler to say. I think it's almost like an episode of Criminal Minds where everything wraps up kind of neatly. And it's like, oh, the unsub like to cut the heads off chickens because when they were a child, a chicken pecked their eye out. You know, like, it's a little too direct. It's a little like, okay, we get it. You know, and like, then, and the way this character interacts with the people who are this character's victims and who this character chooses as victims, it's because, like I said, I'm choosing this person as a victim because when I was a child, I went through X, Y, and Z, and it's a little bit too. I'm probably spoiling the whole thing, but anyway, I want to do a Okay, moving right along. I want to do a trailer reaction to the trailer, but I also don't want to watch the trailer because trailers give away a lot. But I've also read the book and know the whole story, including the ending. So who cares about spoilers of the movie? I don't know. I don't. Let me know if you want to see a trailer reaction. I want to learn how to embed the video before I do it, though. I don't know how to do that. And that's all. I think that's all my thoughts on this novel. Oh, and then the last thing. Okay, I don't like the villain overall, but I thought that one aspect of the villain kind of was a little bit clever because I actually didn't see it. Just like the twist in the middle, I was like, okay, you had me going. I didn't see that twist coming in the middle. The middle twist I didn't see coming. Um there's another ending twist. There's a twist as to who it is, and there's also a twist into ways that they tricked Anna Fox. And I'm like, the way that they tricked Anna, I was like, okay, you had me going emotionally with that little trick. So you had me, you know, like, okay, you got me on that. Like, this book is kind of like, it's like, she's good. That's why I gave her 4 stars. I'm like, you got me. She had me going. She had me going. Anyway, comment, like, subscribe, shout out hello to my first subscribers. Hello, subscribers. This video is dedicated to you.